Joe Leonardo. I'm hanging out with my buddy Alex Turbin. This is Comic Books from Coast to Coast, and today we're looking at a couple of really great artists. Over on my end, we're looking at one of the second round Image guys who came in after the founders had originally laid down the pavement, and we're looking at the awesome work of Keown. What are we doing on your side, Alex?
Yep, and I'm looking at Kevin Maguire, who was I believe that the Justice League was his first work, and he just kind of did a lot more stuff after that. He did do Image because his Strike Back stuff is Image. So, but that was way later on, I think.
Strike Back. I mean, I didn't even know what that was. I've never heard of that before. Go back to that again. That Strike Back.
Yeah, yeah. It's a 5-issue limited series that he did, and one of the things, like, this dude, the main character, he has this, like, I don't know, it's weird multicolored, like a barbershop thing that can just turn into anything he wants. He I guess he usually uses it as a scarf or whatever, but then it can just, if he needs an axe, he turns into an axe or whatever. I kind of don't really remember the storyline too much, but I think it's basic superhero stuff, pretty
That's a
much.
trip. I thought it was like an American flag battle axe for a second
No,
there.
no. So before we get into everything, we want to show the artist brackets for last week. This was a big one because we had 27 voters, and I really appreciate when people vote for the artist. And I think that whenever an artist really speaks to somebody or people or whatever, that's when they really go and they decide to vote and chip in and stuff. And Silvestri just destroyed Stephen Platt. There's 27 votes, and it's like 80% for Mark Silvestri. So definitely people love Mark Silvestri quite a bit more than Stephen Platt. But
Well, I was gonna say Sylvester's been around a lot longer. Like Platt just didn't. Didn't like he was a bottle of wine that never had time to breathe. You know what I mean? Like he just came and went so fast. If he had stuck around and gave us a real career, he probably would have gave Mark a run for his money because he's a terrific artist and they're both really great. But Mark has just got so much more ground covered compared to Stephen Platt. Like
he,
he's just been around so
he
much
does.
longer.
He definitely does. But also, I think a lot of times that these people, and it happens with me, there'll be these two artists in the poll or whatever, and they're just so close. They're so close, but there's just more people that like them, that little bit much more. So they vote for him. So, even though Stephen Platt's getting massacred by Silvestri, people still could very much love Stephen Platt too. So
for sure, I think he's fantastic. I mean, they're both really great. But
yeah.
Silvestri has just got he's got it's got a just finesse. What the French call it, a certain I don't know what. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I mean, he's got that it factor. That just not everybody has. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so this week we're gonna, like we said, you're going over Dale Keown and I'm going over Kevin Maguire. So why don't you start with them?
Yeah, I'm looking at, and this is a fun one too because everybody looks at Pitt, but not everybody is such a kook that they have Pitt 1/2. So today we're going to take a look at Pitt 1/2, which is this would have been the ash can that they released when they were getting people excited.
I was gonna say the ash cans. Is there a Pitt 0?
I don't think there is. I think this would be the Pitt 0.
Right.
Autumn, hello.
Hey,
what's
Autumn.
Up, Autumn? Nice
Thanks
to
for
see
joining
you.
in.
Yeah, thank you for coming by. Always cool to see people on the feed.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is just like, I think this was probably like, what he was releasing to get people excited when the book was about to come out or whatever. Or it's a teaser. I believe this ran in the back of maybe a Youngblood or something like that. You know what I mean? Because they kind of all piggybacked each other at the time.
Right.
But I think I got this out of Wizard or something like that. Like probably saved like a milled in a little tag or something like that. You know what I mean? Got this thing because at the time I just was trying to get everything. But you could just see, like, I mean, he does such cool stuff. I mean, like all of this beautiful hatching up here. I mean, and that's really unusual. That's not something most people would do, is cross hatch on the shadow of a planet like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
But like that's throwing back to like his all this stuff, like, because you just like went over it recently, is like Dragon Force. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Like these dudes are not super different than the aliens that, like, I don't know if you got that far or if, like, what the story you looked at, but in Dragon Force, that like one of the first pinpointal stories, they go into space and they deal with these alien guys, and they look very similar to guys right here. You know what I mean? It's just a few pinpoints are different in little spots or whatever, and the characters are, reacclimatized to these dudes for the pit or whatever, and really cool looking stuff. And he's so good at all this technical stuff, all this little mechanical Al Williams future technology, which is super hard for everybody. And just this awesome looking, these awesome looking aliens. I mean, it's just a Hulk face without a nose, technically, but it just looks so cool, the pit, the whole design of it. It's just so awesome. But we open up on this like very sort of classic, like this is almost like the Keown right here from Star-Lord, and we got this like intergalactic envoys coming in, and they're docking, and he's just like not interested in anything. He just gets out of his shit. And then once again, look at this great little shot down here, like this little thing in perspective and looking out the window to this little bug vessel out here. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 figures out on this platform. And this whole thing, the size of a, you know what I mean? A small yellow post up, thing or whatever. All that detail in this tiny little spot. Really cool.
Hey, who inked and colored that?
The colors are Steve Olive, and all the art is Del Keown.
He inked it.
Yeah, you could tell like say his own inks versus like Scott Williams or whatever, because his stuff is just even though it's very similar to that look or whatever, it's more broader. Like he doesn't have the finesse of a Scott Williams, even though he's doing a very similar style. He just doesn't have that keen razor sharpness that Scott Williams has or whatever. But still, very cool looking stuff. So they come into this, this intergalactic prison, and he's like, "Oh, you better have our prisoner," and he's like, "Oh, we have the state of the art facilities in this quarter of the galaxy, and this gives no way, nothing could happen." And of course, you open the door, and another postage-size shot. Just so much like, just so much atmosphere in this little shot. This dude in the back and the smoke rising. It's just like there's so much. There's like a whole story taking place in this little shot right here. Like you could just look at it and hear the sound of the door, whoosh, opening up or whatever. You know what I mean? He gives it all to you. He's fantastic. And then the guard.
What do you think? Nope. Have we talked about overlapping panels before, and whether, I mean, you obviously like it. I like it sometimes. What do you think about that compared? What's that?
I just think it's how it's done. Like who does it and the way they approach it.
Well, I'm looking at this Hulk stuff that he did years before that, and none of that. I mean, obviously he's grown and changed as an artist doing the pit, but none of that. Well, there's this overlaps a little bit, but I mean, there's a lot of overlapping panels in the pit compared to this.
Well, you got to think you're looking at like. I don't know. Is Jim Shooter still there when he's doing the Hulk? You know what I mean? Like maybe Jim Shooter still got him on lockdown.
Could be
because Shooter was, he was a stickler for that kind of thing. And if you started turning in pages with 4 panels on them, you'd start getting you'd start getting.
No, this is Tom DeFalco as the editor-in-chief. So this is post Jim Shooter.
Wow.
But that doesn't mean he didn't want to grow into and change.
Yeah.
I wonder if that was an Image thing.
I'm sure it is, because Image is letting you do what you want, and I'm sure over at Marvel, there's that sensation of, you're on lockdown for telling the story their way, making sure everybody's, what's that thing they say? Every comic is somebody's first comic, and it all needs to make sense and all that kind of stuff. But so anyways, we got this guy, and he's letting them into the prison, and they go in there and obviously the chains are broken and Pitt's gone. And he's just like, that's impossible. And the dude just looks at him and it's like, there isn't even, this is a great moment. This is really great storytelling. There isn't, like, it's just like this moment between them. Nothing even happened. I mean, this guy was full of so much bravado. He was just like, over here, he's just like, got his face just so full of confidence. He's just like, oh, it's no problem. And then, they open the prison and he's gone. And dude just doesn't even say a word. He just pulls his gun out of his holster and just points it to his head. And we just get this cry, right? But then it's cutting into this, right? And this is the underground train, racing by. So like in cinema, it's like he's pulling the gun out and then he goes to shoot himself and then it's, wah! We get the cut to the train, which is representing the sound of the gun. You know what I mean? How they do that in cinema.
Right. Yeah.
I thought that was great storytelling on Del Keown's behalf, because he's cutting to Earth.
Yeah, definitely.
And just as as the gun is about to go off, he cuts to the A train making this loud, steam horn scream, to replace the gunshot, which is like classic cinema stuff. And that's pretty awesome storytelling. Like just really cool.
Yeah, definitely.
And you can tell, the Hulk has really got him to a place to where he can just tell the heck out of a story. I mean, there's another fantastic shot. We got the little boy here looking great because we all know how hard children are to draw. Old man here looking great. It's always hard for these hero guys to draw regular characters, and Del Keown can do that. Del Keown's one of those people that can draw real characters and make them look like real people. And then we have all these little gang guys, these cheap little hoods are all back here and they're harassing some innocent lady who's just trying to ride the train and go home, and all of it in beautiful perspective. You know what I mean? Just so much mood, once again, telling so much story and these tiny little postage, size panels. And you could probably thank Marvel for getting him to a place to where he could really do that so competently,
Yeah. One of the things I noticed about Dale Keown is that, like in the beginning, like all artists, he had this infatuation or copied or whatever, John Byrne, and like he was a super John Byrne clone, and you could tell like Dragon Force was super X-Men inspired, and
so John Byrne,
yeah,
I still
so
see
John Byrne, but yeah, definitely. I mean it. Somebody style their influences, and it shouldn't, but I think the biggest thing that he does post John Byrne influences, I think that he really his characters and his storytelling and everything is way more three-dimensional than I think even John Byrne did.
I agree with that.
Or
it's definitely right in running. You know what I mean? Like he's just like John Byrne's. Because I mean John Byrne is just he's a Have you seen his uninked, like unauthorized X-Men stuff? Because he's still telling X-Men stories. Have you seen those?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's great. It's fantastic, but there's definitely a flatness to it.
Yeah, it's just the old quality of the way he approaches it. Like it's just because he doesn't do all the pull-out stuff that rounds things. You know what I mean? He doesn't do like the pull-outs that go around the muscles. He's much more. His approach is much more like lighting on fabric kind of thing. You know what I mean? Is the way he lights it, stuff with muscle enhancement under it, as opposed to like the modern approach, which is to underline every muscle and like highlight every vein and that kind of thing, like they do nowadays.
Right.
Still, it's the storytelling stuff is, I mean, even above and beyond the really great art. He's telling really tight storytelling moments of very small things. And that's a classic, John Byrne. That's a classic Marvel. That's a classic DC thing. The more into Image, the farther away we got from this kind of stuff, and especially over at the Extreme Studios, man. Extreme was terrible about telling comprehensive stories that went somewhere.
Right. Yeah.
And
it's all about the characters and the money shots.
Yeah, how flashy the moment is, or whatever. But then at some point they couldn't even do that well. Like you bought thinking it was going to be so cool looking at, and then you opened up the inside and it was like, oh, it never lived up to what you wanted it to be, or whatever.
Right.
At least for me,
Yeah.
they'd always sell you on that really nice cover, and then inside the art would be like pretty weak, a lot of the time. It'd just be
that's horrible.
really generic looking stuff, these generic streets. You could like, it'll be like downtown Los Angeles. It just looks like what? I mean, this is awful. Like,
yeah. But I mean, that's what the cover is supposed to do. It's supposed to entice you into it.
Well, they did, and I was, multiple times let down. Multiple times.
Yeah. My friend was saying he was thinking about suing comic books companies because so often they would have on the cover like this issue somebody dies or something like that, but then you open up the comic and nobody dies. You know what I'm saying?
Always like that. But anyways, we got this really cool. These guys are jumping this chick, and Grandpa runs in to try and stop them. He's like, "Hey, you young whippersnappers, don't you do that?" And like, they start beating the crap out of Grandpa, and Timmy's like not having it, and he bashes this dude upside his head and breaks his brand new hockey stick, and that's going to be a bummer. And the guy's like literally about to like stab this little kid, and all of a sudden, just like out of nowhere, just Pitt gets beamed into the middle of this freaking whole scene, a la Terminator 2. You know what I mean? Like, looks like literally like right out of freaking Terminator 2 right here, and super inspired by all that, I'm sure, super inspired by this could be like, some full on James Cameron moment from a James Cameron movie. But look at this outstanding stuff. Like, that's so cool right here. This whole little moment right down here,
Nice black.
Yeah. It's,
really nice.
And I think this printed a little darker than they wanted to. This one and Pitt one both seem to print a little dark, like, so there might be some like light differential between the way they looked at it on the screen and the way it ended up printing. But Pitt beams in and he just lays waste to these dudes, you know what I mean? Just comes in here and we see this great shot. This is almost like a Deadpool Wolverine shot where all the Deadpools are coming at him in the bus, and lights go out, lights come on, lights go out in classic cinema style, and Pitt's just like taking these dudes out. And
it's great.
He just wastes the whole thing. Timmy gets up just in time to see, Pitt's like, "Hey, you're a little badass, good work." And then Grandpa wakes up just in time to see the entire massacred room, and Timmy's standing there holding the bat like Timmy's the one that took out the whole crew bad guys. And then this classic shot of Pitt escaping, and a tight little story told in like 12 pages. That's stuff from Del Keown.
So is that is Pitt #1 a reprint of that, and then
no Pitt #1 is its own total thing, and it literally jumps right off of there. It's literally just like the very next moment. You could take both of those and put them into like a binded book comic, and it would make perfect sense. You know what I mean? These bikers, other than this town wherever Pitt's in, is just full of bikers and criminals everywhere he goes. He's got to mess up apparently. It's like right off the back, immediately after leaving the train where he had to mess up a bunch of gangsters, he's got to come and mess up another bunch of bikers, you know what I mean? But we wouldn't love much if he wasn't messing up bikers and gangsters in every episode. So let's go ahead and take a look at your side now.
Okay, cool. So that was Dale Keown. Dale Keown's a great artist. I remember mostly from the Hulk, but I think he take over right after McFarlane. I'm pretty sure he did.
I'm pretty sure he did, yeah. And I think just like you were saying, like they try to get him to draw the Hulk a little bit like that in the beginning, that piggy, that wide Hulk, that McFarlane was doing.
Yeah. But I mean, it's like I was saying, when you're so enamored with one artist and then they switch it, like the next artist has to be damn good, or you're going to be leaving the book, or feel sour towards it, whatever. But I think I'm going to say that I like McFarlane better than Dale Keown, but other than that, I think Dale Keown did a fantastic job.
Well, it's cool. It's like it was a great place for both of those guys to sharpen their teeth. You know what I mean? Like they both came out really strong on the other side of the Hulk book.
Oh yeah, and they both got to work with Peter David, and Peter David's got his ups and downs and his good and bad, but overall I think he's a really good writer.
Yeah, I can't say that I've really have sat and read any of that stuff, to be perfectly honest. But, it's always awesome when you can tell a story and have it be comparable, and fascinating and have people be interested and go somewhere. Because so often comic books, it's a great downfall of Western comics, is that they spin stories that go nowhere. And, and if they do go somewhere, the next story cancels out the meaningfulness of where it went. They don't know how to tell a story over any type of period of time. That's why people like Invincible so much and Walking Dead, because they told a story that went somewhere and then left it there. They don't go, oh, we're going to tell the story, but in the next story, none of this stuff happens or matters. You know what I mean? Like, mostly, and like, it's so bizarre because that's mostly what people want, and the comic industry just doesn't get it. Like, maybe they will now that, like, DC has started this absolute thing. Maybe they'll try and take absolute in a direction like that, where it really stays proponent to the things that happen, and keep the ideas meaningful, and the stakes high, because things that are taking place have stakes. That take that happen. And don't just be like, well, oh, we killed this character, but next episode he's back or whatever. It's dumb.
Right. But I mean, it's so difficult for mainstream comics to do that, because they have these iconic characters that they can't just kill, or they can't just change on a whim. They have to, it has to be a big kind of process that they go into, because they're so invested in them, money wise, monetarily, and they have 80 years of history.
Yeah, I agree, but you have to think, dude. Like, it's just like like I just said, like, you could have, you could have these great characters, Spider-Man, you could have Superman, whatever, and you could have 10 different books of them. You know what I mean? And 8 of those books could be going in whatever direction you want, but have one of those books stay in a line. You know what I mean? And it could be its own thing. And you could align other books to that one straight alignment. You could tell a Wonder Woman story like that, where it's the same over a long period of time and aligns with that one story. And, take it in a direction like a manga would, where, the characters have stakes. It could be in their own universe right next to the other universes. Like, it's not like absolute Superman and absolute Batman cancel out Jim Lee's Hush Batman. You know what I mean? Like, Jim Lee's Hush Batman exists, right there, one, vibration away from the absolute guy. You know what I mean? You could take the absolute Batman in a direction like a manga, where, where when Alfred dies, he stays dead, or what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
there's a lot of stuff that be alive again.
Yeah, a lot of stuff that the big two could do, but they just
that's what I mean. Like, they don't even understand the industry they're trying to do. Like, they don't even understand it anymore. But
well, it's about risk. I think it's all about risk.
Yeah, it absolutely is. No, you're 100% right.
Yeah. So let's get into Kevin Maguire, who is really he's one of my favorite artists. He probably would be my favorite artist. Well, I can't really say that. He's not going to be Walt Simonson, but he would be in my top 5 if not for having such little output. Like, he's got this 15 or so Justice Leagues, and then he's got that miniseries, that Strike Back miniseries, and then he has the Defenders. But other than that, he really doesn't have a whole lot of stuff. But as soon as I because I got this from number 1, I believe, and I was hooked right from the beginning, because it was a little different. And this is probably also one of the things where the artist is so complemented by the writers that it just makes for a really great reading experience, because this is one of the few comic books that I genuinely enjoyed because it was funny.
Well, I tell you what, like, right off the back, like, the marriage of the cover and the inside art is gorgeous. There's no loss of whatever. And then that cover is awesome, man. I love those, like, we're in the middle of telling a Justice League like story right now. That's one of the projects we're both working on. And our characters also have to deal with a bad guy that is multiple versions of a thing. And it's hard to draw those, to draw those characters.
Oh my God.
Have to put multiples of them on the page. It's a big, hard chore. So I'm always so enamored of those guys from the 70s, like the Art Adams guys. And what's the name of the artist you're working on right now? Because I'm not familiar with them.
Kevin Maguire.
Kevin Maguire. Okay, yeah, those real classic, because you could see that Kevin Maguire, that his stuff you're looking at is sort of, he's like a spiritual predecessor of like George Perez, and that kind of like early, 70s, 80s kind of DC look. But those guys are they're so strong. Their figure work is so strong. And I'm always so,
Oh yeah.
enamored of those guys that could put so many figures like that on the page and, have it all make sense. Like that first shot right there is really great. Like I love that shot of the character standing there, that it could be Superman real easily, that guy standing there in the foreground with the cape, and I mean, just really cool stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. But one of the really fantastic things about Kevin Maguire and why he's so great in this humor comic book is because his facial expressions are just so like Batman never laughs, obviously, because he's Batman. And but his facial expressions are just so straight on, so dead on, and so captivating. It's like you really believe it's a lot like I compare him to Alex Ross, really.
Well, he's got that, it's like that Disney thing of like really incorporating like all the facial expression into your art, which is something I'm terrible at.
Yeah, it's super difficult. I mean, just getting expressions the right way.
Yeah, I'm not good at that. Like I can push it to a certain extent, and then I mean, like I could make a scared person look shocked, or
Right,
I can make a laughing person look like they're laughing hard or something like that. But it's really hard to get those like sly expressions, like sly, which is like your eyes to the side, or like your face squinched or something, or you know what I mean. There's like so many human expressions that they're really challenging to capture.
Yeah. I would say he's also a lot like who's that artist that swipes porn and copies porn?
I don't know his name, but I know who you're talking
remember.
about.
They look very similar. And when I first saw his stuff in Sojourn or whatever it was, or the X-Men, he did the X-Men for a while. I thought he was really fantastic, and then I realized, of course, that he just traces a lot of the stuff from actual, photographs and stuff. And so I was just like, not really that impressed. But this guy, Kevin Maguire, he's not doing any tracing or anything like that. This is all from either his imagination. I'm sure he does some reference work, but it's not photorealistic, but there's a realism about it that really complements the especially the humor way about it, because it's almost like the art is the straight man in the humor. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I want to say it has a real classic, sort of like 1970s, 1980s Super Friend, like the Alex Toth kind of Super Friends kind of thing going on for it, for sure. And that's a classic. That's the DC thing. They were always all about like, they were they were so strong in the beginning, but once Marvel was the one that pushed it forward. They added in the splash pages more often, you know what I mean? And it just slowly was imperceptible. Like the guys that could do it, like the dudes that did do it, like Jack Kirby and Gene Colan, like those are the guys that kind of pushed or like who's like Steranko, you know what I mean? And they pushed the double, the thing, and DC would never kind of like was never okay with that, you know what I mean? Like you almost never ever saw 2-page spreads over at DC. Like I think the first time I ever saw DC character in a 2-page spread would be that the opening page of Batman Superman, Spider-Man Superman.
Yeah.
You know the shot I'm talking about? It's like
I think so. Yeah.
It's on
that
top
big
of
oversized book.
the Washington building or whatever, like the Chrysler building or something like that. And there's that big, antenna in the foreground or whatever. And I think that's the first time I ever saw Superman in a 2-page spread ever. You know what I mean? Whereas that was way more common for Marvel. And I think just sort of slowly Marvel just sort of like absorbed a lot of, like the people that really wanted that art aesthetic, and DC was staying steady with its people that love DC. You know what I mean? It's like people are tuning in for all the DC characters and loving it and stuff, but they're not like DC was not pushing that art algorithm, So, and it's hard to know like if that was damaging or good for like the industry altogether, right? Because like the art algorithm is rad and it pushes everything forward good. Like Tim Vigil is part of that, and all these guys that can really draw. Al Williamson and these guys that can really, really draw well. And it's like we love that. And it's like those guys never got to be unleashed like the Image guys did. And it's like the Image guys, they all get brought in under these reins, and you become really good under these constraints. And then like they unleash these guys, and it's like everybody loved what they did, but at the same time they did some damage because like most of them couldn't tell very good stories. They were just really great artists,
Right,
so then
right.
It's like it's rad to push the art thing forward, and then at the same time it's like it was damaging to the industry because then the artist became what was important,
superstar. Yeah,
like the characters become less important than the artist who's doing it, and that's cool to a certain extent. I don't have a problem with that, but you have to still treat the character with a lot of respect, and you can't just be like, oh, I'm going to tell the same 3 stories again and again where this guy beats up another guy. It's like they have to go somewhere. It's like that's great at first, and we love that. Everybody wants to see that, but you have to give us a piece of meat along with all the cake and you know what I mean, and ice cream. There's got to be a piece of like turkey meat in there somewhere to eat to fulfill the real nourishment that you need. It can't just be all sweets and candy.
Right. So this is the comic that I think is going to inspire the Guy Gardner in the new Superman movie, and I'm kind of wondering if this scene is going to be in it, where this scene Guy Gardner is giving Batman a hard time. And like it's really pissing Batman off, and Guy Gardner takes his ring off, and he's like just keeps heckling Batman and heckling him, and then Batman just finally smashes him in the face and knocks him out clean cold. And I would not be surprised one iota if that ends up in the movie.
Well, Batman isn't going to be in the film, but I mean,
no, it could be a Superman, or it could be somebody else,
for sure. Or they could replace it with somebody else. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm praying that movie's good, Alex. You don't understand how important Superman is to me.
I know you don't like.
It's not even just that; it's the way they have it packed full of so much. You know what I mean? It's like, it should. I mean, if they were calling that Justice League Unlimited, I'd feel a lot more comfortable than thinking that's Superman, because it's like they got so much packed into it. Like why is Guy Gardner in a Superman movie? Is what I'm concerned with. But I'm not going to judge anything until it comes out, because I love those characters and I pray that it's good. I mean, that's all I could say is I pray it's good. Because
I'm sure it will be.
I hope he gets it right.
It's a hard.
It's a hard. I mean, Superman's not an easy playground for anyone, and it's much less when you're like being brought into it. In the 9th inning, and they're like, we're down on the count, and we need a home run. You know what I mean? That's a lot of responsibility. You know what I mean? Like you got to bring everybody home, or else you strike out big. So
what I want to do is the week or so before it, or a couple weeks before the new movie comes out, I want us to review all of the Superman movies. We rank them how we think they are, and then go over the new movie and see what you think.
Fun. That sounds like a really cool episode. No, but like that's that guy's really. It's so hard. Like like say that cover that you just were showing. That's a hard cover to be responsible for. Because as an artist, you're there's so much ego involved in art, and you're always just like, oh, I want everything I draw to be good and important or whatever. But then sometimes you have to shed your ego and just draw what you're asked to draw. And it's not easy to, can you imagine if I was like, oh, this is the cover right here. You know what I mean? It's, and Booster Gold moving an armoire, friggin', and it's like,
that's why it's hilarious. That's why it's hilarious.
Like some guy had to be assigned to draw that and had to draw it, make it look cool. And it's not an easy thing to get an assignment like that, and do it with competence,
Yeah, and Maguire certainly does. He also, one of the things about Maguire, unfortunately, is he's super slow, and I really don't understand that. Like looking at his stuff, it's pretty. I'm not gonna say it's simple, but it's not very intricate or ornate. It's more reliant on the simple lines that he's doing and them being in the appropriate places.
It's a lot like Mike Mignola. To a certain extent at this point in his career, like these small figures and stuff that he does, and the layouts.
Yeah.
Now the art itself isn't quite like it, but a lot of the figure work is very similar. And anytime you have to tell a story with these many characters and this level of interaction all the time, that stuff takes time.
Oh yeah, definitely. The interaction of the characters is a huge thing that he's really great at.
And then on any
Because
given page, like
it is
just
dialogue
stop
heavy.
right there. Count how many characters are on that page.
Yeah, right here, like
the whole page. That whole page. Just count how many people are on that page. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Like from the top to the bottom, there's like 25 figures that have to be drawn.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's gonna take a few minutes, man.
Yeah.
And every page is like that. And every page has this ensemble. You can never get away from it. So like you can see it taking a long time.
Yep. And this is where Keith Giffen tried to start trying to draw like him, which is very unusual.
Well, probably trying to unify the look, of everything.
I think he just loved Maguire's art and wanted to emulate it and to a certain extent, which there's nothing wrong with that. Because he went on to Keith Giffen went on to do Justice League, not Justice League. What's that teenager future one? Legion.
Yeah,
he went on to do Legion of Superheroes, and he turned that upside down, and he added a lot of the humor and stuff like that into that too, which was
those guys
really enjoyable.
Those multiple character books. Hats off to them, man. I'm always so impressed by those guys. They crush, and that stuff is like, if you want to learn how to really draw, those are the guys you look at. You know what I mean? Like that image stuff, it's real fancy and it can be really tricky, but those guys, a lot of them can't stuff like that. You know what I mean? Those guys that could, that do all that heavy hatching and stuff, they can't hardly come into a book like Justice League and draw 500 characters on a page. You know what I mean? And have it all make sense and look right. It's hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
But that's great stuff. Kevin Maguire and Del Keown, both fantastic artists, very different guys, but super freaking talented. Both of them doing amazing work. And we hope everybody takes the time to come out and vote and leave your opinions and what you guys thought about these amazing artists we're looking at today. I'm Joe Leonardo. I am the guy behind Six Lords of Sound, and that's sort of Jim Starlin-esque heavy metal superheroes in space. If you're interested in my stuff, come over and hang out and look at my Instagram profile. I recently put up a reel from the last time from my last Comic-Con visit, where I was lucky enough to talk to Joe Rubenstein. That reel ended up getting 2,200 views.
Wow, that's awesome.
Right? 170 likes or something like that. It's stunning. I was looking at it yesterday on the algorithm thing, and Instagram's like, this is where your normal views are, and it's all, this is the views for this one. It's all, you should make more reels like this one. I'm just like, oh, no kidding. Hey, thanks for the advice, Instagram. I'll try and do that.
No kidding.
Go out and find 40-year veterans that are going to, look at your work and say something nice about it. Put that up every day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I recently had somebody come on and go like, oh wow, your work is so inspirational. I really tried to draw like you, and I was so flattered. I was like, I've never had somebody go like, oh, like my style is influenced by you. That was really flattering.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Go ahead.
So I'm Alexander Turpin. Random Access, which is a monthly 12-page comic book that I produce for Patreon. You can get this at patreon.com/Alexander Turpin. And I've gone back and white between color and black and white recently, just for time, because of time constraints. But I'm back into the color, and this is the newest issue. It is number 29, and it features Cyrene, and this is actually the 100th page of Cyrene storylines. So I'm going to compact these into 3 more for comic books by herself. So reprinting these, and talk about doing the same character over and over again. I have these cultists, and they're like dragging the group of good guys through this tunnely maze or whatever, and so I had to put them in different positions and different ways, and drawing the same person over and over again, especially when they've got the same mask on. Now that is is you're right. It is kind of a pain in the butt, really.
Yeah, because
But
those guys are like
it's also fun.
they're like the Sons of the Harpy kind of thing going on there.
Yeah, this is a prequel to my big Return of the Old Gods storyline, where they're trying to drag one of our heroes to a place where they're going to sacrifice her to release the old god into the wild or whatever. And you'll have to stay tuned and join my Patreon or whatever to find out if they actually succeed in killing Dina, which is who this is, and releasing the old god. And this is one of the old gods here, not the one they're trying to release. You've probably seen these guys before in my comics, and who's related to them, the old god. And it also has a backup storyline by Paul Corchon, which is also fun. So you can get this at Patreon for $3 a month, and that gives you the comic book, and it comes straight to your house. And also you can get them at alexanderturbin.com.
Yeah, it's just looking really great in color this month too, man. It's super cool to see them in color. Yeah, we're looking forward to you putting all 100 of those pages into one book and binding it all. Like you're gonna have to get all the sirens into one big, what do they call that? Omnibus or whatever. Give us a siren omnibus. Yeah, for sure, dude.
Yeah.
All right, you guys. This has been Comic Books from Coast to Coast. I'm Joe Leonardo. I'm hanging out with my good friend
Alexander Turbin.
And we love hanging out with you guys. We're so happy that you came around and hung out with us. And at the end of our show, Alex likes to always give everybody one last little tip information. Go ahead and let them know what's going on, Alex.
Thanks for watching, and I'll see you during my next video. And we like comments. We love comments. And go vote. Who do you like more, Dale Keown or Kevin Maguire? And also, keep on creating.